Origin Story, Chapter 3, Stormy Skies. The meeting had left both Rosa and Mr. Dothraki in a tailspin. Unearthing these revelations would have far more significant repercussions than could be imagined. It was the first domino to fall, and following it would be an almighty impact felt across the world. Rosa hurried home with darkness as her companion throughout the journey. The winter cold was now biting and making her shiver. Mr. Dothraki was a predator, but she knew he was not hunting her. He had his sights set firmly on Dr. Strostic. Rosa clutched the documents tightly towards her chest as the driving rain seeped through to her shoulders. It was slowly finding its way towards the papers, and she knew they must be protected from the elements, so she hurried her steps. Finally, she reached the ivy. The house appeared as unwelcoming as it could be. The illusion of warmth still needed to be realized. Upon entry, the door slammed behind her with such ferocity that it rattled both door and frame. She hoped anything living had the good sense to wait for the storm to pass before venturing out. For now, Rosa was relieved just to be inside. She set about making a fire and turning her house back into a welcoming home. Building a fire was a skill handed down by Rosa's granny. She reconnected with Granny whenever she performed this ancient ritual. The smell of burned wood and coal reminded her of years past. She remembered her grandmother's hands and how they looked while they showed her how to build a fire. Rosa looked down at the coal dust now coating her fingers. It was funny that her hands now looked very similar as time had passed. Her thoughts again returned to Mr. Dothraki. He would only act on this information with a solid plan of execution. The fire of rage would extinguish itself, and clear thoughts must prevail. Evil though he may be, he wasn't a foolish man, and he may have just one shot to reach Dr. Strostic before the scientist became guarded, or worse, disappeared altogether. The flames were now firmly in control. The fire was generating warmth and light, so the documents and papers began to dry out. Relaxing in her armchair, she was finally at peace. While her body remained at the home by the fireside, her mind enabled her to become an onlooker with the old monastery walls. Initially, the vision was dark and impenetrable, but the power of sight was hers alone, and cloudiness eventually cleared to reveal the stark lighting of the lab with all that lay beneath it. This power was her advantage in this proverbial game of cat and mouse. There he was. Mr. Dothraki had not left the orphanage, and she drew comfort from this. He remained in the lab, surrounded by the debris of years of scientific work. Dr. Strostic or his parents would barely be able to recognize their own workspace now. The destruction Mr. Dothraki had caused touched almost every aspect of the lab except one. His behavior exhibited paranoid tendencies. Everything within his senses was telling him he was being watched. Across the room, free from destruction, stood a mannequin perfectly placed in the corner. The thing stood over 6 feet tall, and had no facial features at all, making the familiar incredibly unfamiliar. It was dressed with great care in a rust-colored suit with a distinguished check pattern, complete with a shirt and tie. The outer layer was a dark, full-length woolen overcoat, creating the appearance of widened shoulders. On top of its head was a black bowler hat pulled forward, framing the faceless face perfectly. Mr. Dothraki staggered towards it, slipping on broken glass. The sounds of yet more test tubes crunching and popping underneath his footfall. He was at eye level now with the tailor's dummy, or at least he would have been had it had eyes. Mr. Dothraki appeared to be attempting some form of communication, looking unsure of himself. Slowly he reached his hand out towards the pocket of the dummy's waistcoat. He touched the end of a protruding chain. "You've lost your pocket watch." He stared at the faceless figure as if expecting a response. Mr. Dothraki then took a tiny step forward and moved even closer. He leaned in towards the dummy and whispered into its ear, "I know where it is." His words should have remained unheard. However, Mr. Dothraki was not alone in the lab. He was the target of intense feline focus. While staying unseen, Mal the cat had been watching. His sleek body had blended in along the backdrop of the wall, his movements silent. It was deeply unsettling for Mr. Dothraki to be the cat's sole focus. "Rosa's not here," he yelled at the cat. Mao was in no particular hurry to display his dominance. He held his gaze as only a cat knew how. Mr. Dothraki picked up a beaker and raised it in a throwing position, as if to threaten Mao. The cat did not flinch, so Mr. Dothraki launched the beaker like a missile through the air. Clumsily, it missed its intended target, smashing against the lab wall. The cat jumped on top of the work counter. Its height advantage frightened Mr. Dothraki. "She's gone," he barked, his words now stuck in his throat as the cat hunched and hissed at him. It was as if Mao had been sent to torment him in his hour of need. No longer able to stand the surroundings, Mr. Dothraki crashed out of the lab and made his way blindly along the corridor, pushing against the Gothic archways. The cold stone was a stark contrast to the body temperature he was now experiencing. Soon he recognized familiar territory. He knew instinctively where his old dormitory was located. In truth, he could find each step blindfolded. He reached for a door, an ornate yet ancient key still in the lock. This was the same key Uncle Felix held on a chain at all times. He turned the key and entered, feeling the years spent here weighing heavy on his emotions. He was trembling yet powerless to stop it. He looked over to where his bed once stood and walked over the same path from the doors he had done 1,000 times as a child. He looked down to see 4 deep circular depressions where the legs of the bed had worn away the floor over years of fear and despair. His demeanor changed from the man he was now to the boy he was then. He sat on the floor as if the bed was still there, and lay down as if he could feel the damp bedclothes around him. His mind was momentarily back there, and it felt dreadful. Back at the Ivy, Rosa watched as he curled up on the dormitory floor. She felt he looked pathetic and broken. Her powers enabled her to see everything going on inside the orphanage. But in truth, she knew it was now time to focus on her own task. So much had happened in such a short space of time, and it seemed it had taken its toll on everyone. She came back to her reality and prepared to look for the documents. Mr. Dothraki felt something fall from his pocket. The small photograph of Dr. Strostik violently snapped him back to the present. His face filled with hate as he studied Strostik's features, and he knew he would have to devise a plan soon. But a car engine noise appeared in the distance, disrupting his thoughts. "What now? Someone's coming," he muttered. From the dormitory window, Mr. Dothraki watched as a black van approached. The lights from the van cascaded across the front of the Gothic architecture through the pouring rain. The driver, Tyrone, and another man, Sully, approached the orphanage's main entrance. Mr. Dothraki raced down the stairs 2 at a time, but something made him stop. He hung back in the shadows and listened intently to the incomers' conversation. "What is this place, T? It looks like it's haunted." "Don't be freaking me out," Sully replied. "We've got work to do, bro." Mr. Dothraki listened to the men's gentle laughter. They seemed so at ease in each other's company, and it was natural how the conversation flowed between 2 friends. "Did you watch that film, bro? I told you it was good," T inquired. "Good. I lasted 15 minutes, Sully replied. They laughed together. "Shut up. Did you fall asleep? I told you before, you've got to order your food earlier. You can't cope with those late-night carbs," T answered. "T, you're wrong, bro. What I can't handle are your film choices." Accidentally, Mr. Dothraki knocked over a plank of wood positioned near the door. "Did you hear that, Sully? Strosik said it was empty," T interjected. "Be cool. Someone's coming," Sully replied. "Nah, you be cool," T laughed. Mr. Dothraki could stand the banter no longer. He had no option but to open the door, gaining a visual on the pair. They appeared athletic and dressed quite similarly in very expensive-looking sportswear. Sully watched as Mr. Dothraki looked them over. He felt confident and gestured to his brand new sneakers, ensuring Mr. Dothraki didn't overlook them. "Hello? How can I help you?" Mr. Dothraki said. The two men now had their turn to check him out. Sully rested his eyes on Dothraki's shoes. He looked disheveled. His appearance had now caught up with his state of mind. "Nah, man. You can't help me with anything," he sneered. Mr. Dothraki felt judged by him. T tapped his friend to signal him to stop. "I'm the new proprietor of the orphanage," Mr. Dothraki explained, hoping that by imparting some information he would gain back some self-respect that he had lost due to his choice of footwear. "Well, it looks like you've got yourself a fixer-upper." Sully laughed and fist-bumped T in a single movement. Both men in unison barged their way into the orphanage, brushing Mr. Dothraki to one side. T called over his shoulder in Mr. Dothraki's direction. "Dr. Strostik sent us. He's our client, and we're here to collect two things he values very much. One's a suit, and the other's the work documents from his lab in the basement." Mr. Dothraki trailed behind them, and the trio made their way to the lab. Sully pushed open the door and was presented with the destruction that had occurred earlier. "What the hell happened here? Have you done this?" Sully asked. Mr. Dothraki looked on uncomfortably at the devastation in the lab and offered no explanation. "Watch your sneakers, Sully. The floor is a mess," T warned. The pair tiptoed through the broken glass, spilled liquid, and collected the mannequin. T held the head, and Sully took the legs. They left the lab with one of Dr. Strostik's possessions, pushing past Mr. Dothraki like he didn't exist. Mr. Dothraki alone again had to think fast. His mind raced, and he quickly concluded they were not taking Dr. Strostik's work documents. On their return, Sully and T's demeanor had changed. There was little eye contact and no attempts at humor. The pair uprighted Dr. Strostik's desk and began rifling through the drawers. "There's nothing here, Sully," T proclaimed and shot a glance expressing the seriousness of the situation. Mr. Dothraki saw a chink in their armor and offered that he'd seen paperwork in the side room. "Sully, go check it out," T suggested while nodding his approval. Mr. Dothraki held open the door and stood aside as Sully entered, seizing control of the situation. He shut the door and turned the key, locking the sarcastic thug inside. Sully banged on the door from the inside, but the great doors of the monastery were built to last. T looked on in disbelief. "Give me the key right now." He leaped forward in the direction of Mr. Dothraki, but he realized there was now a shard of glass where the key should have been. His reaction was to jump backward, and he raised his arms in self-defense. "Stop, please!" T shrieked. Mr. Dothraki's face had contorted, now seeming almost animalistic. He lunged forward with rapid force, stabbing T straight through the heart. The shard of glass protruded from T's lifeless body, and the blood oozed out onto the lab floor. T's eyes were now fixed on the ceiling as they began to close. Mr. Dothraki's attention now turned to his other prey. He was in killer mode and rushed over to the side door. Then, exhaling slowly, he turned the key. Sully burst into the lab and angrily searched Mr. Dothraki's face, but his eyes held a glaze to where T lay surrounded in blood. Sully scrambled over to be beside his friend. The only help he could offer was to cradle T in his arms, but the horror was about to continue. Mr. Dothraki used Sully's shock to his advantage. The knife Sully had brought with him for protection gleamed under the harsh lab lights. Mr. Dothraki reached for it and grabbed the handle from the back of Sully's tracksuit bottoms. Sully felt its movement as the steel slid upwards, and then the agonizing pain as it plunged deep into his back with such force it penetrated his lungs and heart. He slumped forward and exhaled his last breath. The brothers were now dead in each other's arms. Mr. Dothraki, the cold-blooded killer, stepped over the pair without remorse. He would only return to drag each body and place them as if asleep in the Robins' dormitory. The last particularly cruel undertaking he performed was to remove the sneakers Sully was wearing and put them on his own feet. He raced up and down in the orphan's dining room, going from one wall and touching the other. In his mind, he tested the theory that each little boy held. Do new sneakers make you run faster? The answer was no. Eventually exhausted, Mr. Dothraki slid down the wall to rest. Rosa remained at the Ivy. She had no idea how the horrors of the evening now unfolded at the orphanage. Her time had been spent attempting to gain understanding from Dr. Strostik's work through his documents. One area of concern was the finances attached to both the lab and the orphanage over the years. The benefactor, Mr. Pryor, had poured vast amounts of money into Dr. Strostik's work, including completing an invisibility suit and another much more critical and costly project. The visits paid by the benefactor seemed sporadic, but eventful, and were recorded in the daily logs completed by Dr. Dothraki's parents. Though fascinating, Rosa was becoming concerned with what she was reading. The codes within the work were quite unfathomable to Rosa. She needed help. Rosa held the phone receiver to her ear and heard a familiar voice. Hello, you have reached the voicemail of Ramsey Lawson, private detective. Unfortunately, I am not able to take your call. Leave a message after the beep. Rosa looked to the heavens. Her voice wobbled with heightened emotion.
Ramsey, I really need your help. There's something big going on, and I fear that without our intervention, we are all in great danger.